The wild colt was tied to a rusted post, thin and silent, while everyone walked past pretending he didn't exist. Until a disabled veteran approached with slow steps, looked into the animal's eyes, and did something no one else there had the courage to do when they realized what it truly meant. Hands began to tremble, and everyone around fell into complete silence. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where in the world you're watching from, because now I'm going to tell you everything. You see that? Out back by the pumps? Ellie Perkins wiped the counter with a clean rag. She did not look up. "See what, Hank?" she said. "The horse, that little horse tied up behind the fill and go," Hank said. He stirred his coffee slowly. "Been there for days now. Looks half-starved." Ellie placed the sugar packets in their holder. She put the white ones together, then the pink ones, then the brown ones. "I see it," she said. Her voice was flat. "Everyone sees it." "Well?" Hank asked. "Ain't someone gonna do something?" "Do what?" Ellie stopped arranging. She looked at Hank. Her blue eyes were firm. "It's a wild thing, a scared wild thing. You gonna walk up and untie it? It'll kick your head clean off." Hank looked down at his coffee. "Seems wrong," he muttered. "Just leaving it there." "What seems wrong is asking for trouble," Ellie said. She turned to the window. Main Street was quiet. Old man Miller tied it there. Said it wandered onto his land. Said he's waiting for the county to come get it. Until then, it's not our business. We look the other way. That's how you keep a town safe. Outside, the sky was the color of old chalk. The air felt heavy. A few people walked along the sidewalk. They passed the gas station. Their eyes glanced toward the back. Then, like clockwork, they looked away. They looked at their phones. They looked at the cracks in the pavement. They hurried a little faster. Behind the fill and go, the world was still. A single rusted metal post was sunk into the hard ground. A thick, dirty rope was tied to it. The rope led to a young horse. He was thin. His brown coat was matted with dust and mud. You could see the shape of his ribs under his skin. His legs were long, but they shook. He stood very still, only his head moving in small, nervous jerks. His eyes were wide, showing white all around. In the center of his face, a splash of white hair marked his coat like a spilled cup of milk. He pulled at the rope. It was tied with a hard, mean knot. It did not give. The rope had rubbed the skin on his neck raw. He stopped pulling. His head drooped. The back door of the gas station opened. A man came out with a bag of trash. He threw it in the dumpster. The loud bang made the colt jump. His hooves scrambled on the gravel. The man looked at him, shook his head, and went back inside. The door slammed. The colt stood, trembling. He waited. He did not know what he was waiting for. On Main Street, Maya Flores walked home from the library. Her backpack was heavy with books. She saw Mrs. Peabody from the flower shop step outside, look toward the gas station, and then quickly go back in. Maya's step slowed. She could just see the top of the colt's head over the short fence. Her own heart beat faster. She wanted to walk over. She wanted to see. But people were watching from windows. If she went to look, they would see her looking. They would talk. So she did what everyone else did. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt up and looked straight ahead, walking fast until she turned onto a street. Life in Mill Creek was like that. It was a quiet town, a town that had learned to be quiet. People spoke about the weather. They spoke about high school football. They did not speak about hard things. They did not speak about the young horse tied up and alone. Talking about it would mean they had to do something about it, and doing something was dangerous. It was easier to pretend not to see. The afternoon grew older. The colt stood by the post. He was thirsty. He was so hungry his stomach felt like a hollow stone. The fear was a cold feeling that lived inside his bones now. He watched the world with his big, white-rimmed eyes, waiting for the next loud sound, the next sudden movement. He did not know that his life was about to change. He did not see the man walking slowly down the other side of the street, a man with a stiff leg, wearing an old green jacket, a man who moved through the town like a shadow, people nodding to him but not stopping to talk. Leo Briggs needed gas for his old truck. He turned into the fill and go. He did not look at the people. He looked at the ground. He was good at that. He pumped the gas. The numbers on the pump clicked by. His leg ached, a deep, dull pain that was always there. He finished and put the pump back. He started to walk toward the station to pay. That's when he heard a soft, shaky sound. It was the sound of an animal breathing fast. Leo stopped. He turned his head. He saw the post. He saw the rope. And for the first time, Leo Briggs looked up. He saw the horse. Leo looked at the horse. He did not look away. His eyes, a tired hazel, met the Colt's wide, frightened ones. For a long moment, the whole world shrank to that space between them. The sounds of the town faded. Leo did not hear the distant traffic. He did not feel the ache in his leg. He only saw the horse, the rope, and the fear. It was a fear he knew. It lived in the quiet of his small farmhouse at night. It was in the tightness in his chest when a truck backfired on Main Street. It was the feeling of being tied to something you could not escape. The Colt took a step back. The rope pulled tight. A low sound came from its throat. "Easy," Leo said. The word was soft, almost lost in the air. He had not planned to speak. He turned his body slowly so he was not facing the Colt directly. He kept his hands loose at his sides. He learned this in a different place, a desert place, with different kinds of scared creatures. You did not stare. You did not challenge. You just existed nearby. "You're in a fix, huh?" Leo said, his voice a low, steady murmur. From the window of the Fill and Go, the clerk, a young man named Todd, watched. He picked up the phone. "Hey, Ma," Todd said. "You'll never guess. Leo Briggs is out back talking to that wild pony." In her diner, Ellie Perkins listened. She held the phone between her shoulder and ear as she wiped tables. "Talking to it? What's he saying?" "Can't hear, just standing there. Looks like he's gonna get himself kicked." Ellie sighed, a heavy sound. "That's all we need. A veteran getting hurt by that thing. The county was supposed to come today. I called them myself." "Well, they ain't here," Todd said. Leo did not know about the phone call. He only knew about the horse. He took one small step closer. The gravel crunched under his boot. The Colt jerked its head up, snorting. Leo froze. "Okay, that's okay. No closer." He stood still again. He saw the raw place on the Colt's neck. He saw the way its hip bones stood out sharply. He saw the dried mud and the tangled mane. But mostly, he saw the eyes. They were not just scared. They were defeated. That, he knew too. "You're all alone," Leo said, not with pity, but with simple recognition. "I know that." He did not move to untie the rope. Not yet. The knot was thick and complex, pulled tight by panic and weather. It would take time. It would take trust the Colt did not have. So Leo began to give the only thing he could, his calm. He talked about nothing. He talked about the heavy gray clouds. "Gonna rain tonight," he said. He talked about the old fence post. "You picked a rusty one to get tied to." He talked in a rhythm that was slow and even, a sound to cover the silent scream of fear. Across the street, Maya Flores stood at her bedroom window, a book forgotten in her hand. She saw the man in the army jacket standing in the empty lot behind the gas station. She saw the shape of the horse. Her breath caught. He wasn't walking away. He was just asterisk their asterisk. Her mother called from downstairs. "Maya, dinner." "Coming," Maya called back, but she did not move. She watched. Leo's leg began to throb from standing still. He shifted his weight, a slight, stiff movement. The Colt's ears flicked forward at the motion, then back. "Hurts, don't it?" Leo said, as if the horse had spoken. "Standing still when you want to run. My leg's like that. It's better if I keep moving." He took a slow, deliberate step to the side, dragging his bad leg just a little. He was not moving toward the horse, but parallel to it. He was showing he could move without being a threat. The Colt watched him. The tremble in its legs lessened, just a little. A slow minute passed, then another. From the doorway of the hardware store, old Mr. Jenkins watched, arms crossed. Hank from the diner stood next to him. "What's he doing, Hank?" Mr. Jenkins asked. "What's it look like? He's standing there." "Well, it's foolish. That animal's a danger." "Seems pretty calm right now," Hank said, his voice thoughtful. Leo heard none of this. His world was the horse and the rope. He saw the Colt's head lower an inch. It was not a relaxed drop, but it was not a defensive jerk either. It was a sign of watching, of listening. It was the smallest sign. It was enough. "All right," Leo whispered, more to himself than to the horse. "All right." Very slowly, he lifted his right hand. He held it out, palm open and empty, to his side. He did not reach toward the colt. He just showed his hand. The horse's eyes locked onto it. "Just a hand," Leo said softly. "See? Nothing in it." He began to move forward again. This time his path was a gentle arc, bringing him closer to the post, not directly to the colt's head. Step, drag, step, drag. The colt stiffened but did not rear back. Its breath came in quick puffs. Leo's focus was now on the knot. It was level with his chest. He was close enough to touch the rope. He kept talking, a soft stream of words about the coming rain, about the quiet town, about nothing at all. He stopped an arm's length from the post. The colt was so close he could smell its scent, fear, and dirt, and animal. He kept his body turned sideways. With the same slow care, he raised his hand again and let the back of his fingers brush the rough, thick rope. The colt shivered but held its ground. Leo's fingers traced the hard twists of the knot. It was tight. It would take both hands. He would have to look down for a moment. He took a slow, deep breath. This was the dangerous part. "I'm gonna need 2 hands on this," he said, his voice still calm. "I'm not touching you. I'm just touching the rope. You understand?" The horse blinked. Its nose was now only a few feet from Leo's shoulder. Leo lowered his gaze. He looked at the knot. He took the rope in both hands. The rope was rough and cold under Leo's fingers. The knot was a hard, tangled puzzle of wet nylon, pulled so tight it felt like stone. He kept talking, his voice a low, steady hum in the quiet space between him and the horse. "This is a mean one," Leo said, his fingers working carefully at a loop. "Someone didn't want you going anywhere." The colt stood rigid, its nose close to Leo's sleeve. He could feel the tension on the rope change as Leo worked. Its breathing was quick, but it did not pull away. Up on Main Street, a small group had gathered. Ellie Perkins stood outside her diner door, her pink apron bright against the gray afternoon. Hank was beside her. A few others lingered nearby, pretending to look at store windows. "He's gonna get bit," Ellie said, her voice tight, "or kicked. That animal is a loaded gun." "He seems to know what he's doing," Hank offered. "Knowing and doing are 2 different things, Hank." Ellie crossed her arms. "That's a wild creature. It doesn't understand kindness. It only understands fear." Inside her bedroom, Maya had her forehead pressed to the window glass. She saw the way Leo's shoulders were relaxed. She saw the colt's head, which was now turned toward the man, ears pointing forward. She didn't dare blink. Back at the post, Leo felt a single loop of the knot give way. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A slow breath escaped him. The colt's ear twitched at the sound. "Little bit," Leo murmured. "Just a little bit at a time." He picked at another twist, his knuckles white with the effort. The rope had dug into the wood of the post. He had to loosen it enough to slip it over the top. His bad legs screamed at him for staying in one position, but he ignored it. All his focus was in his hands and his voice. "Almost there," he said. The words weren't for the crowd. They weren't even really for the horse. They were for himself, a mantra to keep the world small and simple, a knot to untie, a scared animal to calm. One task. With a final firm tug, the main tangle of the knot came loose. The rope went slack in his hands. The colt felt it immediately. The terrible, constant pressure on its neck was gone. It threw its head up, eyes wide and confused. It took 2 quick steps back, its hooves clattering on the gravel. A gasp went up from the people on Main Street. Ellie took a step forward. "See?" But the colt did not run. It stood there, free, the rope now hanging loose from its halter and dragging on the ground. It looked at the open space behind the gas station. It looked at the trees. Then it looked back at Leo. Leo did not move. He held the untied rope in one hand. He slowly coiled it, keeping his movements smooth. He made himself small and uninteresting. "You're loose," Leo said quietly. "You can go if you want." The colt took a shaky step to the side, then another. It was testing the new feeling. The rope trailed behind it, no longer anchoring it to the rusted post. It took a few more steps, putting distance between itself and Leo. It was halfway across the vacant lot. The crowd was silent, watching the wild thing begin to move. Then the colt stopped. It turned its head and looked right at Leo. Leo finished coiling the rope. He gave the horse one last slow nod. His job was done. There was nothing more to fix here. He turned, favoring his bad leg, and began to walk away. He headed not toward the staring people on Main Street, but toward the side road that led out of town, toward the old county road and his farm. The gravel crunched under his boots. Step, drag, step, drag. He did not look back. For several long seconds, nothing happened. The Colt stood in the empty lot, free and alone. The people watched, waiting for it to bolt, to run wild through someone's garden, to cause the trouble they all expected. Then, a soft sound, the gentle thud of a hoof on dirt. Maya, at her window, saw it first. Her hand flew to her mouth. The Colt was walking. It was not running toward freedom. It was walking slowly, its head low, following the exact path Leo had taken. The loose rope snaked along the ground behind it. Step, drag, step, drag. It matched the rhythm of the man ahead of it. Hank let out a low chuckle of disbelief. Ellie just stared, her mouth slightly open, her arms falling to her sides. Leo heard the footsteps behind him. He stopped. Very slowly, he turned his head. The Colt stopped too, about 20 feet back. It stood still, waiting. Leo looked at the animal. He looked at the long road ahead. He looked back at the town, where every face was turned toward them. He knew what this meant. The quiet life he wanted was gone now. This choice, this horse, had changed everything. He turned back toward the road. He did not call the horse. He did not wave it forward. He simply started walking again. And step by careful step, the lonely Colt followed the lonely man, leaving the town and its rusted post behind. The screen door of the Creekside Diner slapped shut behind Hank. He walked back to his stool, shaking his head. "Well, I'll be," he said, his voice full of wonder. Ellie was still staring out the window, past the Pie of the Day sign, toward the empty county road. "He can't just take it," she said, more to the glass than to Hank. "That's not his property. That's someone else's problem." "Looks like it's his problem now," Hank said, stirring his cold coffee. "Horse sure seems to think so." "It's an animal, Hank. It doesn't think. It just follows." Ellie turned, her face set. She untied her apron with sharp, practiced movements. "Miller said the county was coming. I'm calling the sheriff. This is a matter of public safety now." The walk to Leo's farm was 2 miles. The old blacktop road was cracked and quiet. Leo walked on the grassy shoulder, his bad leg dragging a little more with each step. He did not turn around, but he listened. He heard the soft, steady rhythm of hooves on pavement behind him. Not too close, not too far. About halfway, he had to stop. A sharp pain shot from his knee to his hip. He breathed through it, leaning slightly against a fence post. He heard the footsteps behind him stop too. He glanced back. The Colt stood in the middle of the empty road, the rope still trailing from its halter. It watched him, its sides moving in and out. It was tired too. "Long way for both of us," Leo said, his voice rough. After a minute, he pushed off the post and kept walking. The Colt waited until there was a good distance between them before it started walking again. Finally, Leo turned onto a narrow dirt driveway. A rusty mailbox read Briggs. The driveway led to a small white farmhouse with a sagging porch. Next to it was a red barn, its paint faded and peeling. The fields were overgrown with tall brown grass. It was a place that had been sitting still for a long time. Leo stopped at a wooden gate that led into a small pasture. The fence was old but still strong. He opened the gate and walked through. He left it open. He walked to the middle of the field and then he turned. He stood and waited. The Colt stood at the end of the driveway, at the edge of the road. It looked at the open gate. It looked at the field. It looked at Leo. Minutes passed. A crow called from a nearby tree. Slowly, one careful hoof at a time, the Colt moved off the road and up the driveway. It paused at the open gate, stretching its neck to sniff at the air inside. Then, it stepped through. It walked into the pasture, its head low, exploring this new, open space. It took a few skittish steps, then broke into a short, wobbly trot, the rope flying behind it. It ran a little circle in the tall grass before stopping, its nostrils flaring. Leo watched. A feeling, quiet and fragile, unfolded in his chest. It wasn't happiness exactly. It was the absence of a weight he had carried for so long he'd forgotten it was there. He walked slowly to the barn. He came out with 2 buckets. One he filled with water from the outside pump. The other he scooped full of fresh hay from a bale inside. He carried them back to the pasture, his gait stiff. He placed them on the ground near the fence, then walked a good distance away and sat down in the grass, his back against a post. The colt watched the buckets. Its hunger was bigger than its fear. It edged closer, step by step. It stretched its neck out, sniffing violently. Finally, it dipped its head and took a mouthful of hay. It chewed fast. Then it took another. It moved to the water and drank in long, loud gulps. Leo sat perfectly still. He watched the horse eat and drink. He watched the way its muscles moved under its dirty coat. He watched the white mark on its face, like a piece of the moon had fallen onto it. "Shadow," Leo said out loud. The word just came. "You follow like a shadow." The colt's ear flicked back at the sound of his voice, but it didn't stop drinking. When the shadows from the trees grew long, Leo stood up. His body ached from the long walk and from sitting on the ground. He moved to the gate. The colt, Shadow, lifted its head from the now empty hay bucket and watched him. "I'm gonna close this," Leo said, his hand on the gate. "So you're safe, so you can rest." He closed the gate and latched it. He was turning to go to the house when he saw a movement by the roadside mailbox. It was a girl. She had long dark hair and was holding something in her hands. She looked like she was about to run. Leo stood still and gave a small nod. The girl, Maya, took a few hesitant steps up the driveway. She stopped far from the gate, her eyes huge as she looked at the colt in the pasture. I brought these," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She held out 2 red apples. "For him." Leo looked at the apples. He looked at the girl's nervous face. He walked over slowly and took them from her. "Thank you. Is he okay?" Maya asked, her eyes not leaving Shadow. "He's tired," Leo said. "He's eating. That's a start." Maya nodded. She looked like she wanted to say 100 things, but no words came out. Finally, she just took a step back. "Okay, bye." She turned and walked quickly back toward town. Leo looked down at the apples in his hand. He looked at the horse. He looked at the darkening sky. For the first time since he came home, his quiet farm didn't feel empty. It felt full of something new and uncertain, and alive. He placed the apples on top of the fence post. "Tomorrow," he said. He walked to his quiet house, knowing nothing would be simple anymore. The next morning, the news was everywhere. Ellie Perkins stood behind the diner counter with a pad of paper and a pen. Her mouth was a thin line. "I'm not asking you to be cruel, Roy," she said to the man on the stool. "I'm asking you to be sensible. That animal is on loose property. It's a liability. Sign the petition. It just asks the county to do their job and remove it." Roy, the postman, shifted uncomfortably. "Ellie, I saw it follow Leo home. It was calm as could be." "It was in shock," Ellie said, her voice rising. "Today it's calm. Tomorrow it kicks down a fence and runs into the street. A child could get hurt. We have a responsibility." She pushed the paper toward him. Roy sighed, scribbled his name, and went back to his eggs. At a corner booth, Maya picked at her pancakes. She listened to every word. "You hear about this petition, Maya?" Ellie asked, walking over with the coffee pot. Maya kept her eyes on her plate. "Yes, ma'am." "Your mother would sign it if she were in town," Ellie said, not unkindly. "It's about safety. That man is a hero, but he's not thinking clearly. He's got problems. That horse is a problem on top of it." Maya didn't answer. She just nodded. When Ellie walked away, Maya slipped out of the booth, left money on the table, and left. Outside, the town felt different. People talked in little groups on the sidewalk. Maya heard pieces of conversations as she walked to school. Said it charged at him just for walking by. Should have let the county handle it. Poor Leo. He's just not right since he came back. She pulled her hood up and walked faster. At school, it was the same. In the hallway, a boy named Kevin mimicked a horse kicking. His friends laughed. "You gonna go pet the wild stallion, Maya?" he called out. She ducked her head and kept walking. The whole town felt like it was pressing in, choosing sides, and her quiet agreement with Leo felt like a secret she was keeping. Out at the farm, Leo was brushing the old mud from Shadow's coat. The colt stood still, his head low, eyes half closed. "See?" Leo said softly, working the brush in slow circles. No sudden moves, just you and me. A crunch of gravel made them both look up. A county sheriff's car was coming up the driveway. Leo put the brush down slowly. He gave Shadow a pat on the neck and walked to meet the car. Sheriff Lynn Collins got out. She was a tall woman with a calm face. She took off her sunglasses. "Morning, Leo." "Sheriff." "Got a call from Ellie Perkins, few others too, about a horse." "He's here," Leo said, nodding toward the pasture. The sheriff walked to the fence. She looked at Shadow. Shadow looked back, his ears forward, curious. "He looks calm," she said. "He is. Ellie says he's a danger, a public nuisance." "He was tied to a post at the Fill and Go for a week," Leo said, his voice even. "No food, little water. That was the public nuisance. He's not that now." The sheriff leaned on the fence. "Old man Miller says it was a stray on his land, says he was holding it for the county. I untied it. It followed me home. I'm holding it now," Leo said. "If the county wants to take him, they can come see him, see how he is." Sheriff Collins was quiet for a moment. "You got any paperwork on him, Leo? A bill of sale?" "No." "You plan on getting any?" "If I need to." She watched Shadow take a few steps and nibble at the grass. "Ellie's got a petition. Got maybe 15 names on it already." Leo just nodded. He knew how towns worked. "I'll tell you what," the sheriff said, turning back to him. "I don't see a danger right now. I see a contained animal on private property. But Leo, if that horse gets out, if it causes any damage, any scare, the county will have to act, and it'll be out of my hands. You understand?" "I understand." "Good." She put her sunglasses back on. "You take care now." Leo watched her car go back down the driveway. The quiet of the farm returned, but it was a different quiet. It was a quiet with eyes on it. He walked back to Shadow. The Colt nudged his shoulder with its nose. "It's just you and me, huh?" Leo said, picking up the brush again. "Against the whole town." That afternoon, Maya came back. She didn't go to the door. She went straight to the fence post where Leo had left the apples the day before. They were gone. In their place, she left 2 green apples from her family's tree. She was about to leave when Leo spoke from the barn door. He liked the red ones, but he'll probably like those too. Maya jumped. "I'm sorry. It's fine," Leo said. He walked over. He didn't smile, but his eyes were soft. "You can leave them." "They're saying things in town," Maya blurted out. "They have a petition. They want to take him away." "I know. What will you do?" Leo looked at Shadow, then at the girl's worried face. "I'll keep him safe," he said. It was a simple promise. Maya nodded. That was enough for her. For now. She turned and walked home, a small defiance growing in her chest. She knew what side she was on. The petition had 23 names by the end of the week. Ellie kept it by the cash register. "Common sense," she said to anyone who would listen. "It's just common sense." But out at the Briggs farm, a different kind of sense was being learned. Every morning Leo went to the pasture. He did not walk straight up to Shadow. He would open the gate, sit down on an old tree stump, and just be there. Sometimes he had a bucket of grain. Sometimes he just had his own quiet presence. The first few days, Shadow stayed on the far side of the field. On the 4th morning, Leo was sitting on the stump, rubbing the smooth stone he kept in his pocket. He saw Shadow's head come up. The Colt took a few steps toward him. Then it stopped. "That's okay," Leo said, not moving. "Take your time." Another step, then another. Soon, Shadow was close enough that Leo could see the dark, soft center of his nose twitching as he sniffed the air. He stretched his neck out, his body tense, ready to flee. Slowly, Leo opened his hand. In his palm was a little pile of oats. Shadow jerked back, then leaned in again. His lips brushed Leo's palm, tickling. He took the oats. He chewed quickly, his eyes on Leo's face. "See?" Leo said, his voice low. "Just food. Nothing scary." Maya came every afternoon after school. She brought apples. She never knocked on the house door. She just went to the fence and waited. One day, Leo saw her there. He whistled, a short, low sound. Shadow's ears perked up. Leo nodded toward the fence. "Go on," he said. Shadow looked at Maya. He took a few hesitant steps in her direction. Maya stood perfectly still, holding a green apple flat on her palm the way she had seen Leo do with the oats. Shadow stopped an arm's length away. He sniffed the apple, then took it with a soft crunch. Maya's breath caught. She didn't move her hand. Shadow finished the apple and nudged her empty palm. "He says thank you," Leo said, walking up slowly. "He's so gentle," Maya whispered. "He's learning," Leo said. "So am I." "What are you learning?" Leo watched Shadow nuzzle Maya's sleeve. "I'm learning that some things can't be forced. They can only be invited." At the diner, the talk continued. "Saw that girl out there again?" Hank said, stirring his soup. "The florist girl, bringing apples to that beast." "She's going to get her fingers bitten off," Ellie said, slapping a plate down in front of him. "And then her mother will blame me for not stopping her." "Seems pretty friendly from what I saw." "It's an act, Hank. That's what wild animals do. They lull you into a false sense of security." Ellie looked out the window, her brow furrowed. "I called the county again. They said as long as it's contained and no complaints of neglect, there's nothing they can do. Can you believe that?" "Maybe there's nothing that needs doing," Hank said softly. Ellie didn't answer. She just started refilling the sugar packets, her movements sharp and precise. One afternoon, a thin, cold rain began to fall. Maya was at the fence, her hood pulled up. Leo was in the pasture, trying to put a simple halter on Shadow for the first time. It was just a rope, no bit, something to get him used to the feeling. Shadow did not like it. He tossed his head, backing away as Leo tried to gently bring the rope over his neck. "Easy, boy. It's just cloth. It won't hurt you." But Shadow's old fear was back. His eyes showed white. He skittered sideways away from Leo. Leo stopped. He lowered the halter. He stood in the rain, letting his own frustration melt away. He just stood there, becoming part of the gray afternoon. Shadow stood, trembling, 20 feet away. For a full 5 minutes, neither of them moved. The rain pattered on the grass. Then Leo sat down, right there in the wet field. He put the halter in his lap and looked at the ground. Maya watched, confused. What was he doing? Slowly, the tension left Shadow's body. The rain soaked his back, but he stopped trembling. He took one step, then another. He walked over to Leo and stood beside him, lowering his head to sniff the man's wet hair. Leo didn't look up. He didn't reach for the halter. He just sat, and the horse stood with him. Maya understood then. It wasn't about making the horse obey. It was about waiting until the horse chose to be with you. It was a kind of strength she had never seen before. The strength to be still, to be patient, to trust that something would come to you without being forced. The rain began to fall harder. Leo finally stood up, his bad leg stiff. He gave Shadow a soft pat on the neck. He left the halter on the ground and walked toward the barn. Shadow followed him, step for step, without any rope at all. Maya turned and walked home, the image fixed in her mind. The man and the horse in the rain, not fighting, just being together. It was the most peaceful thing she had ever seen in Mill Creek. 2 days later, the sky did not get light. It stayed a deep, heavy gray from morning on. The air was still and thick. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the first thunder rumbled, a long, low growl in the distance. Ellie Perkins looked up from wiping tables. "That sounds mean," Hank said, sipping his coffee. "Weatherman said flash floods," Ellie replied, her voice tight. "Creek's already high from last week's rain." At the library, Maya watched the dark clouds roll in. The librarian announced they were closing early. "Everyone get home safe," she said. Maya packed her books. She thought of Leo's farm, low near the creek. She thought of Shadow in the open pasture. The rain started just as Maya was walking home. It did not start slow. It fell all at once, hard and loud, beating on roofs and streets. Within minutes, the gutters were rushing rivers. Leo heard it on his tin roof. He was in the barn, fixing a hinge. Shadow stood in his stall, ears flicking at the noise. "Just rain," Leo said, but he walked to the barn door to look out. The world had turned into a wall of water. He could barely see the fence at the edge of the pasture. The dirt driveway was already a muddy stream. In town, Main Street began to empty. People ran from their cars to doorways, holding jackets over their heads. The rain came down in sheets. Ellie stood at the diner window. "Look at that," she whispered. Down the street, the small ditch that was usually dry was now spilling over the curb, brown water spreading across the asphalt. Then the power went out. The lights in the diner flickered and died. "Great," Hank muttered in the sudden gloom. The real trouble was the creek. Mill Creek, which gave the town its name, was a winding stream that passed under Creek Road at the east end of town. It was usually gentle. Now, fed by 100 rushing ditches and hillsides, it swelled. It climbed its banks. Brown, churning water swallowed the low spots near its edges. Mrs. Agatha Peabody was trying to get home. She had been at her sister's house on the other side of the creek. She was 82 years old, and she drove a big old sedan very slowly. She didn't like the rain, but she knew the road, or she thought she did. She turned onto Creek Road. The water was already covering the pavement, but it didn't look deep. She drove forward slowly. Halfway across the low bridge, the car's engine sputtered and died. The water had gotten into the exhaust. It was too deep. Mrs. Peabody tried to restart the car. Nothing happened. She looked out her window. The water was not just on the road now. It was rising up the sides of her doors. It was coming from the creek, rushing past her car, pushing against the metal. She was trapped. At his farm, Leo felt a deep unease. This was more than a hard rain. He heard a new sound underneath the pounding water, a low, steady roar. He knew that sound. It was the creek, overflowing its banks. Maya arrived at his gate, soaked through, her hair plastered to her face. "Leo!" she shouted over the rain. He opened the barn door and she hurried inside, breathing hard. "The creek," she gasped. "My mom called. She's stuck at work, but she said the creek is over the road. She said it's bad." Leo nodded. He looked out at the driving rain. Creek Road. A few people lived out that way. Old Mrs. Peabody lived out that way. Just then, his old cell phone, which had barely any signal, buzzed with a town alert text. "Flash flood warning. Creek Road impassable. Seek higher ground." A minute later, it buzzed again. This time it was a message from the town's phone tree, forwarded by a neighbor. "Is anyone near Creek Road? Agatha Peabody's sister says she hasn't gotten home. Her car might be stuck." Leo's blood went cold. He looked at Maya. Her eyes were wide. "She's out there," Maya said. Leo thought fast. The town's one rescue truck was on the other side of the county. The sheriff would be overwhelmed. The water would be moving fast, too fast to walk through with his leg. It would knock him over in seconds. His eyes went to Shadow, standing calm and solid in his stall. The horse was strong, his legs were powerful. He was not afraid of water, but would he be afraid of this asterisk? "Get my raincoat from the hook," Leo said to Maya, his voice suddenly clear. "And the lead rope, the thick one." Maya didn't ask questions. She ran and got them. Leo walked to Shadow's stall. He opened the door. The horse looked at him, trusting. "This is different, boy," Leo said, slipping the simple halter over his head. "I need your help. Can you be brave?" He led Shadow out of the barn and into the pounding rain. The horse flinched but followed Leo's steady hand. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, pulling on the raincoat he'd handed her. "The road will be flooded. I can't walk through it. He can." Leo tied the end of the long lead rope into a secure loop. "I need you to run to the top of the driveway. When you see headlights, you wave them down. You tell the sheriff where we've gone. Can you do that?" Maya nodded, her face pale but determined. Leo put a hand on Shadow's wet neck. He looked toward the roar of the creek, invisible through the curtain of rain. Someone was out there, trapped and scared, just like a horse tied to a post. He took a deep breath. "All right, Shadow, let's go see." The rain was a cold, driving force. It stung Leo's face as he led Shadow down the muddy driveway toward the road. The roar of the creek grew louder with every step. Shadow's ears were pinned back, but he followed Leo's firm, calm lead. They turned onto the main road. Water was already flowing over the blacktop, ankle deep and rushing toward the ditch. In the distance, near the bend for Creek Road, Leo could see red brake lights glowing through the gray downpour. A car was stopped. Other people were there, standing back from the edge of the deeper water, pointing and shouting. As they got closer, Leo saw it. Creek Road was gone. In its place was a wide, angry river of brown water, carrying branches and debris. In the middle of it, maybe 50 feet out, was the roof of Mrs. Peabody's big sedan. The water was up to the windows. Sheriff Collins's SUV was there, its lights flashing. She was on her radio, her voice tense. "I need that rescue boat now. She's stuck in the middle." "It'll take 30 minutes, a deputy yelled back over the storm. "She doesn't have 30 minutes. Leo led Shadow right up to the edge where the pavement disappeared into the flood. People turned, their faces shocked. "Leo, get back!" the sheriff shouted. "It's too fast!" Leo ignored her. He looked at the car, then at Shadow. He patted the horse's wet neck. "You see it, boy? We have to go out there." Shadow snorted, pawing at the rushing water with one hoof. He was afraid. Leo could feel the tension in the rope. "Easy," Leo murmured. "One step." He walked forward into the water. It was shockingly cold and powerful, pushing hard against his legs. He leaned into it, his bad legs screaming in protest. He took another step. The water was at his knees. He felt a pull on the rope. Shadow was not following. The horse stood at the edge, trembling. From the car, Mrs. Peabody's face appeared at the window, pale and terrified. "Leo, it's no use," the sheriff called. "Wait for the boat." Leo turned back to Shadow. He didn't yell. He didn't pull. He just stood in the rushing water, looking at the horse. He spoke, and though his voice was lost in the storm, his calm was a signal Shadow knew. Shadow took one shaking step into the water, then another. The current pushed at his legs, but he was stronger than Leo. He waded in, up to his belly, until he was right beside Leo. "Good," Leo said. He moved to Shadow's side. Using the fence post by the road for balance, he slowly, painfully, pulled himself onto the horse's bare back. He hadn't ridden in years. He wrapped his hands in Shadow's mane. "All right, Shadow. Forward. Slow." He pressed with his legs. Shadow hesitated, then obeyed. He began to move through the flood, his powerful legs pushing against the current. The water rose to his chest. Debris bumped against them. Shadow's eyes were wide, but he kept going, one steady step at a time. On the shore, everyone fell silent. Ellie Perkins had come out from the diner. She stood next to Hank, her hand over her mouth. Maya had reached them, soaked and shivering, her eyes glued to the horse and man in the water. It felt like hours, but it was only minutes. Step by careful step, Shadow carried Leo across the flooded road to the stranded car. The water swirled around the doors. Leo slid off Shadow's back into the chest-deep water, holding onto the horse for balance. He grabbed the car's door handle. It was locked. He knocked on the window. Mrs. Peabody stared at him, stunned. "Unlock the door, Agatha," Leo shouted. She fumbled and finally did. Leo wrenched the door open against the current. Cold water poured into the car. "I can't," Mrs. Peabody cried, clutching her seat. "Yes, you can," Leo said, his voice firm. "Take my hand. You're getting on the horse." He helped her out, her legs unsteady. The water was so strong she almost fell. Leo held her tight. He turned to Shadow. "Steady, boy. Steady." He guided Mrs. Peabody's hands to Shadow's mane. "Put your arms around his neck. Hold on." She did, sobbing with fear. With a great effort, Leo helped lift her, and she half fell, half climbed onto Shadow's back, lying forward and clinging to him. Leo then pulled himself back up behind her. Shadow stood like a rock beneath them, solid and sure. "Back now, Shadow. Back to dry land." The horse turned, feeling the extra weight, but he did not panic. He began the slow, arduous walk back through the raging water, fighting the current that tried to push him downstream. Every step was a struggle. Leo held on to Mrs. Peabody and whispered to Shadow, a constant stream of calm in the chaos. When Shadow's hooves finally found the pavement on the other side and he climbed out of the flood, a cheer went up from the crowd. Sheriff Collins and the deputy rushed forward. They helped Mrs. Peabody down. She was crying and shaking, but she was safe. Leo slid off Shadow, his legs buckling from pain and cold. He leaned against the horse, breathing hard. Shadow lowered his head, nuzzling Leo's shoulder, his own sides heaving. Ellie Perkins just stared. She looked at the wild colt she had been so afraid of. She looked at the old woman, wrapped in a blanket, alive because of him. All her words about danger and common sense dried up in her throat, washed away by the flood. The morning after the storm was clean and bright. The creek had gone back to its banks, leaving behind mud and broken branches. But in the town, something else had been left behind. Something that couldn't be washed away. Ellie Perkins stood in her diner before opening. The petition was still by the cash register. She picked it up. She looked at the 23 names, her own at the top. The paper felt heavy in her hand. She folded it once, then again, and dropped it into the trash can. She didn't say a word. She just walked into the kitchen and began to bake. At Leo's farm, the sun was drying the muddy fields. Leo was brushing Shadow down, checking him for any cuts from the debris. The horse was calm, eating his hay as if he hadn't carried 2 people through a flood the day before. Maya arrived out of breath. "Is he okay?" "He's fine," Leo said. "Tired, but fine." "Everyone's talking about it," Maya said, her eyes shining. "At the gas station, at the post office, they all saw." Leo just nodded. He didn't know what to do with that kind of talk. A little while later, a car came up the driveway. It was Sheriff Collins. She got out, but she wasn't alone. Old Mrs. Peabody was with her, walking slowly with a cane. Leo and Maya walked over. Mrs. Peabody looked at Shadow, then at Leo. Her eyes filled with tears. "Young man," she said, her voice shaky, "I don't remember much from yesterday. It's all a blur of water and fear. But I remember this horse. I remember his warmth. I remember holding on, and him bringing me home." She reached out a wrinkled hand. Shadow, to everyone's surprise, lowered his head and let her touch his nose. "Thank you," she whispered to both of them. The sheriff cleared her throat. "Leo, the county won't be bothering you about this horse. Not after yesterday. Consider the matter closed." After they left, Leo stood quietly for a moment. He felt a hand on his arm. It was Maya. "You did it," she said softly. Asterisk. "We asterisk did it," Leo corrected, looking at Shadow. In the afternoon, another car came up the drive. It was Ellie's old sedan. She got out, holding a pie dish covered with a checkered cloth. She looked nervous, which was a strange look for Ellie Perkins. She walked up to the fence where Leo was fixing a loose board. Maya was there, handing him nails. Ellie stopped a few feet away. "Leo." Leo turned. He saw the pie. He waited. Ellie's face worked for a moment. The words seemed stuck. I brought you a pie. Apple. From the last of the summer apples." "Thank you," Leo said, his voice neutral. "I also came to say..." She took a deep breath. Her eyes were on the ground, then on Shadow, who was watching from nearby. "I was wrong. I was so wrong." Her voice broke. "I was scared of the wrong thing. I thought that horse was the danger. I thought you were making a mistake." She looked up at Leo, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "But you saw what he really was. You saw it from the very first day. And I was just adding another rope." She held out the pie. Leo took it from her hands. "It wasn't just me," Leo said gently. "It was him too. He just needed to remember he was strong." Ellie nodded, wiping her face with her apron. Would it be all right if I..." She gestured toward Shadow. "You can try," Leo said. "He decides." Ellie walked slowly to the fence. She held out her empty hand, palm up. Shadow looked at her. He looked at Leo. Then he took a few steps forward and sniffed her fingers. He gave her hand a soft nudge with his nose. Ellie let out a small, choked sob. "Hello, Shadow," she whispered. The next day, Hank showed up at the farm with his toolbox. "Heard that barn door was sagging," he said. Mr. Jenkins from the hardware store came with a bag of new nails and 2 bags of feed. "On the house," he grunted. A few other people came too. They brought hammers and wood. They brought sandwiches and a jug of lemonade. They didn't ask. They just started working on fixing the old barn. Leo didn't know what to say, so he just worked alongside them. Maya brought a flyer she'd picked up in town. It was for an animal rescue place over in Lexington. "They need volunteers on Saturdays," she said to Leo. "I'm going to ask my mom if I can go." Leo looked at her, at the new determination in her eyes. "You'd be good at that," he said. That evening, with the barn door hanging straight on its new hinges, everyone left. Leo sat on his porch with a piece of Ellie's pie. Shadow was in his pasture, grazing on the fresh grass the rain had brought. The fear that had hung over the farm, over the town, was gone. It had been washed away, not by the flood, but by a simple act of bravery from a once wild heart. Leo took a bite of pie. It was sweet, and it tasted like a new beginning. 3 weeks later, Mill Creek felt like a different town. It was not a loud difference. It was a quiet one. People looked at each other when they passed on the sidewalk. They did not look at their shoes. They said good morning, and meant it. In the Creekside diner, Ellie Perkins placed a plate of eggs in front of Hank. Then she put a small bowl of sugar cubes next to his coffee. "What's this for?" Hank asked. For later, Ellie said, nodding toward the window. For when they walked by. Right on time, Leo and Shadow came down Main Street. Leo walked with his slow, steady limp. Shadow walked beside him without a lead rope, matching his pace. The horse was cleaner now, his chestnut coat shining, his body filling out with good food. The white mark on his face was bright in the sun. As they passed the diner, Leo gave a small nod through the window. Ellie waved. Hank took a sugar cube, walked outside, and held it out on his flat palm. Shadow stopped and took it gently. "Good boy," Hank said, patting the horse's neck. A few people on the street stopped and smiled. No one ran. No one was afraid. After their walk, Leo and Shadow went back to the farm. Maya was there, waiting. She was wearing old jeans and boots. "Ready?" Leo asked. "Ready," Maya said. Leo opened the pasture gate. He held up a simple rope halter. Shadow walked right up and put his nose into it. "Good," Leo said. He handed the end of the lead rope to Maya. "You take him today." Maya's eyes got big. "Me? He trusts you. Just walk him around the pasture. Let him get used to following you." Maya took the rope. Her hand was steady. She clicked her tongue softly and took a step. Shadow followed. Step by step, they walked a big circle around the field. Maya's face was serious, full of concentration. When they finished the circle, she stopped and gave Shadow a piece of apple from her pocket. "He did great," Leo said. "He did," Maya agreed, a proud smile breaking through. "I start at the animal rescue in Lexington on Saturday. They said I can help with the scared dogs." "You'll be good at that," Leo said. "You know how to be quiet and patient." Later that day, Ellie was restocking pie in the diner case when Hank spoke up. "You know," he said, "I was thinking about that old rope, the one that tied Shadow to the post." "What about it?" Ellie asked. "It wasn't just tying up a horse, was it?" Hank said, his voice thoughtful. It was tying up all of us. To being scared, to not helping. Leo didn't just untie a horse. He untied that whole knot." Ellie was quiet for a moment. She looked out at Main Street, peaceful in the afternoon sun. "I guess he did," she said softly. "I'm glad he did." At sunset, Leo sat on his porch. His leg hurt, a deep ache that would probably always be there, but it was a quiet pain. It was just a part of him now, like the scar on his jaw. Shadow was in the pasture, grazing. The repaired barn stood solid behind him. From town, the sound of a lawnmower buzzed and someone laughed. Maya had gone home. Before she left, she had said, "It's funny, you set him free, but he didn't really go anywhere. He chose to stay here." "He's not the only one who got set free," Leo had answered. Now, sitting alone, he knew it was true. The fear that had lived in his own chest, the fear that told him he was broken and should stay away from people, was quieter now. It was not gone, but it was no longer in charge. He stood up and whistled. Shadow's head came up. The horse walked to the fence. Leo walked over and rested his forehead against the horse's strong, warm neck. Shadow breathed out a long, sighing breath. "We're all right," Leo whispered. The real wildness had never been in the Colt. The real wildness had been in the storm of fear that kept a whole town lonely. One man saw past it. One horse remembered his strength, and the town learned how to look, not away, but at each other. In the quiet Kentucky evening, a man and his horse stood together, free.